whose ancestors were taken in chains from Africa at the barrel of a gun.
David Lammy and Keir Starmer give away British sovereign territory without a single shot being fired to right the wrongs of the past. This is a massive strategic victory for China and... What will Starmer give away next? The Falklands? Gibraltar? Also tonight.
Very, very happy to be on Camilla Tominey's show, Boris Johnson on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got Boris. The BBC's loss is our gain. Plus...
You are the wrong one, the violent one, the weird one, whereas I am the chosen one.
Dawn Butler is accused of being a racist and posting a video that included rapists and murderers. And Lord Ali allegedly meddled in the Iraqi elections. The scandal deepens every single day. Plus...
What do we want? 10%! When do we want it?
Now! Now civil servants are going on strike. Why? Well, of course, it's because they decide that they don't want to work more than 2 days a week in the office. What a joke. On my panel tonight is political commentator Jess Gill. We've got Conservative peer Lord Bailey and former Labour advisor Matthew Larser. Oh, and what happens next here? Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Labour's lazy left-wing civil servants could bring this country down. Next.
Patrick, thank you very much and good evening. The top stories. Well, the UK has announced that it's giving up sovereignty of the Chagos Islands after more than half a century. The deal, reached after years of negotiations, will see Britain hand over the Chagos Islands to China ally Mauritius. It includes the tropical atoll of Diego Garcia, which is home to a military base used by the UK and the US. Under the agreement, the base will remain under UK and US jurisdiction for at least the next 99 years. But Conservative leadership candidates reacted angrily to this, with former Foreign Secretary James Cleverly labelling the government as weak. And Tom Tugendhat says the move undermines UK security.
Does is it means that although the airbase, which is jointly UK-US operated, is maintained on a 99-year lease, the other outlying islands go back to Mauritian sovereignty. Now, there are many other countries which will be interested in a permanent base in the Indian Ocean, China being one of them.
In other news, Downing Street says the Prime Minister has paid back more than £6,000 worth of gifts and hospitality received since becoming Prime Minister following a backlash over donations. It comes as the Labour peer at the centre of a row over donations to Sir Keir Starmer has been placed under investigation by the House of Lords standards watchdog. Lord Ali faces a probe over what is being called the alleged non-registration of interests. He's one of the party's biggest donors and the largest donor to the Prime Minister. Now, G7 leaders have warned of a dangerous cycle of attacks leading to uncontrollable escalation, they say, in the Middle East as conflict spirals in the region. In a joint statement released today, they expressed deep concern about the deteriorating situation. That comes as at least 9 people have been killed in an Israeli airstrike in central Beirut. The Israeli military says it was a precision attack on the building which they say housed a Hezbollah-affiliated health centre. It comes as Israel's warned more people to evacuate in southern Lebanon. Meanwhile, Hezbollah says it's detonated a bomb against Israeli forces infiltrating a southern Lebanese village. Israel is carrying out an offensive against the Iranian-backed terror group Hezbollah, which partly prompted Iran to launch around 180 ballistic missiles at Israel. Meanwhile, more than 150 British nationals have left Lebanon on the first UK government-chartered flight out of the country. Foreign Secretary David Lammy confirmed there will be additional chartered flights to help those who want to leave, as he warned about the ongoing volatile situation. And a man has been arrested after a suspected acid attack which seriously injured a 14-year-old girl outside of a school in West London. Now, that attack happened at around 4:40 p.m. on Monday at a school in Alfred Road where a substance was allegedly thrown at 2 children and also a staff member. The 14-year-old girl remains in hospital with potentially life-changing injuries, and she's also undergone surgery. An investigation was launched, and this morning a 35-year-old man was arrested on suspicion of causing grievous bodily harm. And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening. There's another epic Labour cock-up brewing. This time it's the civil service. So when Keir Starmer became Prime Minister, he said this.
How hard you work, how much you believe in what you're doing for our country. And it taught me a huge amount about what public service really means. Delivering change won't be easy. You don't need me to tell you that. It will require a different way of working. One of openness, of collaboration and transparency in everything we do. But from the get-go, I want you to know that you have my confidence, my support, and importantly, my respect.
That was his message to the civil service. We are 91 days into his government, and bang, civil servants vote to go on strike over being forced to work in the office 2 days a week. Members of the Office for National Statistics could walk out, or presumably that just means stay at home and do nothing like they usually do. They are reportedly already supposed to spend 60% of their time in the office. That's just not being enforced. These are the people that we need to help keep the wheels of this country turning. Now, look at this chart of the amount of civil servants we have, right? Let's keep that on the screen for a bit. As of March 2024, there were 510,000, more than that, 510,500, full-time civil servants. There are 8,220 more than in the previous quarter. There are now 22,175 more civil servants than we had a year ago. For what? What are we getting? We've got a bloke from the Department of Work and Pensions out campaigning for George Galloway, saying fruity stuff about Palestine.
Stand for humanity, stand for Palestine, stand for George Galloway. Brothers and sisters, we can make history.
We've got taxpayers spending money on woke jolly-ups like Black History Month's All About Hair, an insight into Afro-textured hair, hosted by the DVLA. Right? Lesbian Visibility Week at the Bank of England, and as well we've got an offbeat sari exhibition going on. So fantastic, that's great. It's estimated that these ridiculous things could cost the taxpayer more than £2.5 million a year by 2040. I bet we're not paying them less to sit around at home instead of having to get the train to work every day, are we? This is the same civil service that David Lammy felt the need to appease by hoisting the bisexual awareness flag outside the Foreign Office. It's the same civil service that nearly handed Gibraltar back to the Spanish without a single shot being fired. Sound familiar, given today's news? It's the same civil service that has got Matthew Rycroft as permanent secretary to the Home Office. He apparently got a £30,000 bonus on top of his whopping 6-figure salary, despite not being able to tell MPs how many people we'd actually deported. He was also, for a time, the head of diversity and inclusion, which might be why he kept the borders open, but that's obviously just my theory. And when they are at work, they're leaking stuff. No wonder Kemi Badenoch said this.
It is not all civil servants. I don't want people to get me wrong. There's about 5 to 10% of them who are very, very bad. You know, should be in prison bad. Leaking official secrets, undermining their ministers, telling, agitating. I had some of it in my department, usually union-led. But most of them actually want to do a good job, and the good ones are very frustrated by the bad ones.
If our civil service was a private business, there'd be mass redundancies, people getting sacked left, right and centre, and it will be placed into administration. Our entire public sector is a complete Luddite shambles. A union has managed to stop the use of £1 billion worth of trains because they don't like the windscreen wipers. Honestly, the civil service got what they wanted. They got a Labour government, didn't they? And they're still kicking up a fuss. It's easy to forget, actually, where this Labour corruption and cronyism row started. It started with the civil service, actually. Starmer allegedly wanting to shove a load of donors into some quite cushy jobs there. It's becoming really hard, I think, to make the case that the civil service isn't stacked full of lazy, left-wing layabouts. Let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. Our political commentator as well, Jess Gill. We're joined by Conservative peer Lord Bailey and former Labour Party advisor Matthew Lars. Look, Sean, I'll start with you on this now. I mean, this idea of going on strike because you're not going to work in the office for 2 days a week, I mean, should we just sack them?
Look, I think there's three things to be said about the civil service. Firstly, they're not all bad, but some of them are very, very bad, and it seems like the very, very bad ones are in the ascendancy and have the voice. More importantly, though, it's just unfair. We are setting up a society where if you are a working man or woman, you're a bus driver, you work in a nursery, you're a plumber or whatever, you have to come to work. Bearing in mind, you are paying the bills of these people who don't have to come to work, who'll have a considerably better pension than you and probably earn more than you. I'm not accusing civil servants of earning too much money. Some do, most don't. But the most important thing is they're going to get to a point where it's the public versus the civil service, and they will lose.
I've got a little thing here. Hopefully we can bring this up. So there's a list, it's on a spreadsheet form, which is of like all of the different... I mean, look how long this is, right? There's about 439 of these things. We're whizzing through it so you don't have to, OK? But these are all of the kind of pointless little woke groups that are there, whether it's like, you know, all of these kind of things about, you know, Afro-Caribbean hair or whatever they do on their days out. All of that stuff. There's loads of that, loads of it. And just, I wonder, you know, our civil service, they seem a lot more up for doing things like whatever it was, you know, an international sari exhibition, as opposed to actually doing the performative function of their jobs a lot of the time, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. The wokery of the civil service is absolutely astonishing. It's crazy considering that the taxpayer is funding these people. And that's the thing, when the civil service wants to go on strike, it's a strike against the taxpayer, not like a regular business where they strike against the business. Although I don't think that if the civil service did go on strike, there would be that much of a change, considering, yeah, they don't really do anything. So maybe they should go on strike to prove that they actually, the majority of them seem to be quite pointless.
I think it's unfair on the people, you know, who are obviously quite decent people. But Matthew, I'll just throw to you, you know, some of the things that Kemi was saying there about the civil service leaking stuff, you know. I mean, nobody likes a rat or a snitch or a grass, do they?
Well, no, I mean, I thought it was the most ludicrous of Kemi's many ludicrous interventions this week, because, of course, we know that the biggest source of leaks in the last government were from fellow cabinet ministers who were leaking against each other. One cabinet minister was said to, you know, be honest, you have to hand your phone in when you go in, but he said to be, you know, leaking away what was on the cabinet afterwards. So I think she's blaming civil servants.
Leaking in the civil service.
It is.
But why don't they get prosecuted?
Because have you ever seen the Yes Minister episode where they do the leak inquiry and they find out that it came from their colleagues? That's why, because, I mean, there are leak inquiries and people have been prosecuted in the past, but, I mean, most leak inquiries come from politicians.
But there's a huge difference. If a politician leaks, yes, it's out of order, but they're politicians. The civil service has a code. And as a politician, as a minister, you can't run this country unless you can have a conversation in front of civil servants that isn't going to appear in a newspaper. And also, they then open themselves up to the very real criticism. They're a campaigning organisation. And I really do think the civil service needs to get hold of the people who are dragging it into disrepute, because they'll all suffer. The day they have to confront the public, a politician will say, I'll get rid of the civil service, or I'll change it radically, and that politician will get in and do that.
Do you not think that it is laughable, the idea that if you are going to go on strike because you're not going to go into work for 2 days a week? I mean, for me, that's the kind of person that arguably shouldn't be employed anywhere, let alone in the functionings of government, I would have thought.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this is the psychology of a typical leftist, if I do dare say, that they don't want to have accountability, they don't want to work hard, and the civil service breeds that type of person. And I think that's what we see. This is why there's such this big blob in terms of when it comes to, you know, all these trainings in terms of diversity and inclusion, when they spend more time on that. I think that's why, because the people who think they're important enough to go to the civil service are the type of people who realistically shouldn't have power. Yeah. And time again, they've blocked the government from actually making power. Jacob Rees-Mogg goes on about it all the time. Kemi Badenoch went on about it. They're constantly blocking any time the government wants to make right-wing action. And I think they're one of the biggest issues in terms of why we haven't got else anything done over the past 14 years.
Or sometimes they'll leak things to the press, or at least try to, that are fundamentally untrue as well, and obviously nobody likes that. Just on a slightly different note, Matthew, you know, this idea as well that the civil service there is this ruthlessly efficient thing. Keir Starmer there saying, look, we respect you, we love you. That's not what's needed, is it? They've got to get back to work.
So, look, most civil servants are going into the office. There is a particular problem at the Office of National Statistics where this strike is planned, which is only a couple of thousand people in total. Basically, they were shunted from London to Newport in South Wales, and the organisation has had some issues. There's basically been a massive breakdown since then.
What does Starmer do to this? Because he's trying to be on their side, isn't he?
He's not on the side of...
They're saying, oh, come on, I know how stressed you've been. We're all stressed.
Yeah.
Taxes going up. We've been locked down.
Well, he said that. He'd say that to frontline workers as well. But we say, you know, it's very easy to sit and attack civil servants, but, you know, and we can just get rid of them all. But if you don't have, you know, we all want the rules and regulations where we need them. Take Grenfell, which we all know about, you know, where regulations were let to go by the wayside.
The civil service, the part of the civil service you said having a particular problem, nothing to do with our rules and regulations. And this is...
No, and they need to sort it out, the ONS.
This is the problem, isn't it? Much of what the civil service does is very, very important. And they're able to hide behind that. But you look at the councils across this country, a different version of civil service, they are suffering, they are penniless. And it is indefensible to have all these jollies and do all these extracurricular activities that lower your productivity when that money could go directly to councils. That is frontline services.
This very afternoon...
Frontline services is councils. Let's take some of the waste in the civil service and give it to councils.
Today, this very afternoon, I've been in a major corporate building, which a media company, which publishes 2 national newspapers, both of which have historically supported the Conservatives. And guess what was on the wall? A whole list of groups, from the Christian group to the LGBT group, because that's what modern business practice is.
Sorry, that's rubbish. Do you know what the key difference is with that? That's their money. If you want to spend your money on potatoes and plastic shovels, that's your business. Don't spend my money on it. Very different thing.
Yeah, look, 100%. Look, guys, great start. Thank you very much. Lively start to the show. It is time, of course, for the Great British Giveaway. Civil servants can enter, I believe. It's your chance to win the equivalent of having an extra £3,000 in your bank account every single month for the next year. A whopping 36 grand in tax-free cash. Here's all the details that you need to make that money yours.
And good luck.
Coming up, Keir Starmer's jaw-dropping decision to give up the Chagos Islands to Mauritius has sparked complete outrage, and rightly so. But negotiations over the strategically important islands were started by the Tories, so are they to blame? I'm very much looking forward to talking to straight-talking Conservative MP Mark Francois when he joins me live shortly. Question marks, massive question marks over what Labour decided to do today. But first...
You are the wrong one, the violent one, the weird one, whereas I am the chosen one.
Well, that was Labour MP Dawn Butler, just casually demonising anyone that's not black there. Oh, and it turns out that the video originally used the images of a collage of Black Power activists, some of whom have been convicted of murder and rape. So is Dawn Butler guilty of racism herself? Going head-to-head on that are the director of anti-racist campaign group Don't Divide Us, Alka Sigal Cuthbert, and the Labour activist and writer Aisha Ali Khan. Stay tuned.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Founded in 1990 in Knightsbridge in London, the Beverly Hills Bakery offers some of the finest American baked goods in the United Kingdom. Beverly Hills Bakery has delivered gifts to all the UK Prime Ministers of the last 20 years, with, I think, the exception of Sir Keir Starmer so far, and provided gifts for the royal family and for royal births. As we near the 35th anniversary of the bakery, I'm joined by the owner and head pastry chef, Rosa de Souza, and Manuel de Souza, who is the director of the Beverly Hills Bakery. How marvellous to see you both. Welcome to GB News.
Thank you for inviting us.
So, why has this formula worked? Why did London need a Beverly Hills Bakery?
What we do is we're a bakery, but underlying it's actually a gifting experience.
Right.
So this is an alternative to flowers. So in terms of concept, that has maintained its originality despite going on for 35 years. And in fact, what I do is I often ask myself, why is it going strong? To remind myself to focus on those things that we need to focus on.
So instead of sending a bunch of flowers, you send a beautiful box of cakes like that, or confection like that, complete with bunnies and so on.
Exactly. So you have the concept on the one hand, but you also need the quality of product that goes inside. And I think that's where Beverly Hills Bakery has got a great product.
And it's where Rosa comes in, isn't
Yes.
it?
Yes.
So when did you start to bake? Did you start to bake domestically in your home, and did it spread from there?
We started from home, my mother's baking, where we didn't have all the stoves and things like that. We baked on the charcoal, you know, like the greens.
Yes.
And we started baking. I learned from my mother the baking.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained. I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
This Sunday, join me, Camilla Tominey, for an exclusive interview with one of the most controversial, influential and unique political figures of our time. Boris Johnson will be in studio discussing his new memoir, Unleashed, the gripping story of how he dealt with plotting politicians, problematic princes and a pandemic. From Boris bikes to Brexit and everything else in between. This Sunday at 9:30 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Now, coming up, after Keir Starmer just gave up our sovereign territory at the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, I will be joined live in the studio by Mark Francois MP to talk about what a complete catastrophe this is. Would you have voted, do you think, for Keir Starmer if you'd have known that he was just going to dish out a bit of British sovereign territory without a shot being fired? But first, is Labour MP Dawn Butler guilty of racism? It's time for that to happen. Well, the always outspoken Labour MP Dawn Butler has hit the headlines for all the wrong reasons after she posted this video on social media to celebrate the start of Black History Month.
You are the wrong one, the violent one, the weird one, whereas I am the chosen one, because I am of the first ones. You see this skin I'm in, this beautiful mahogany brown, this skin you don't like, I believe. So why you try so hard to achieve by burning yourself in the sun? For me, there's no need, because I am the chosen one, for I am of the first ones. I know I'm black and beautiful, an African freedom fighter. My skin is my protection, and you, my friend, don't matter.
But GB News can exclusively reveal that the video featured a collage of Black Power activists who have been convicted of murder and rape. The video includes the portrait of Assata Shakur, who was convicted of murdering a press officer in America in 1973. The footage also appears to glorify Eldridge Cleaver, a convicted serial rapist, who considered raping white women an insurrectionary act. Butler has since deleted the video but re-uploaded a new one without the portraits of convicted murderers and rapists. So, yeah, that's nice, isn't it? She's also published a statement outlining that she strongly opposes their views and actions. But the new video also appears to label white people, quote, wrong, violent and weird. So tonight I am asking, is Dawn Butler guilty of racism? You also do have to ask yourselves the question, don't you? If that was posted by a white person about anyone else, would that not just, without a shadow of a doubt, be deemed to be far-right, white nationalist, white supremacist, racist, and would they not be hauled over the coals for that? You would think so, wouldn't you? But I am joined now by Labour activist and writer Aisha Ali Khan. I am also joined as well by Alka Segal Cuthbert, who's the founder of Don't Divide Us. So thank you very much for joining me. Great to have you both on the show. Alka, I'll start with you. Do you think that this is racist?
Yes, I do. You know, in this rather cringeworthy doggerel, Dawn Butler presents herself as a freedom fighter, you know, an African freedom fighter. And quite frankly, it's a travesty. It's a travesty of freedom. It's a travesty of struggle, travesty of democracy, and last but not least, a complete travesty of poetry. I think the people of East Brent are really ill-served by this sort of narcissistic adolescent prancing from their MP.
OK. Aisha, look, I'll bring you in on this now. If I had released that video saying everything that she just said, but I was talking about white people, I mean, I'd never work again, would I? Why is it OK for her to say it?
Well, first of all, I don't agree with that, Patrick. I think you would absolutely work. I think poetry is a great medium to express yourself. And Dawn's used her platform and she's used poetry as a way of expressing herself and to celebrate Black History Month, and also to catalogue and present some of the challenges that Black people have had to face over the centuries of being oppressed and so on. So I don't see there's anything wrong with the poem. I can absolutely see it being taught in schools and analysed and so on later on. And I
just to be clear on that, then you actually think that poetry, which appears to suggest, I mean, as some people are saying, Black supremacy, should be taught in schools?
I don't think it suggests that at all. I think she's expressing herself. She's celebrating the fact that she is a Black woman. A woman of Black heritage. She's obviously highlighting, obviously the imagery in the video that she's presented, showing African kings, Egyptian kings, and so on. I think it's a celebration, according to Dawn. And obviously, we live in this country.
So she says, just to drill down on that, because she says that she is the chosen one. Other people are weird, violent. She comes from the first ones. I mean, I don't know, Alka.
She's referring to what she's referring to.
I'll just bring Alka in. Alka, what do you think of that?
I think Aisha said it. This is the world according to Dawn. I don't think many people would share that worldview. I think it's a real mistake to call it poetry. It's doggerel. And there's nothing educational about it. I mean, it's a complete fictition. It's a kind of fictitious view of a sort of weird Egypt, Wakanda type vision, which is fine if you're as talented as Sun Ra and you're making music with it. But an elected official that's meant to be, upholding serious political ideals, preaching things that are racist, not true, and infantile. I mean, there is nothing educational about it at all.
So
I disagree.
All right. Let me put this to you. Let me put this to you directly, okay? And this is just if Nigel Farage had released a video that appeared to describe the Muslim community as being weird, wrong, violent, and that he himself, simply by the virtue of the colour of his skin, was in some way better than them, there'd be calls to lock him up, wouldn't there?
Patrick, how many times has Nigel Farage released, posted tweets, made comments, posted on Facebook?
He's not said that he's better than someone based on the colour of their skin.
Muslims, demonising people of colour. That's not really a good example, in my opinion.
No, it is because it's exactly the example. Actually, it's exactly the example. And let me tell you exactly why it's the example. Because Nigel Farage has spoken very forceful and strong terms about things like integration, multiculturalism, and Islamist terrorism and immigration. Yes, fine, but he's never said or released a video that appears to insinuate that singularly based on the colour of his skin, he is better than other people. Dawn Butler's done that, hasn't she?
Well, let's be honest, if Nigel Farage wasn't a white middle-aged man, he wouldn't be given the platforms. He's been on Newsnight, he's been on Question Time.
Well, answer the question.
Aisha, answer the question.
Go on, answer the question, Aisha.
What was the question?
Dawn Butler has released a video which suggests that she is better than certain people based singularly on the colour of her skin, hasn't she?
Well, no, I think she's celebrating the fact that she's a black woman, and she's celebrating the fact that it's Black History Month. And like, the guest opposite me has suggested, this is her, obviously I said this myself, this is Dawn's view. She's highlighted the fact that her sort of ancestors were colonized. She's a daughter or granddaughter, great-granddaughter of slavery. It's one of those things that we as people who have been colonized, obviously I'm Pakistani, I've got Indian heritage, we understand what it's like to colonize.
I'll bring up travesty. It is a complete travesty. So a real freedom fighter like Frederick Douglass, who, by the way, got his manumission in Britain thanks to the people, the mill workers and Quakers in Lancashire, or someone like James Baldwin or Maya Angelou, whose favourite author happened to be Shakespeare, by the way. These are people who would be worthy of celebrating, not the people or the I daren't even call them ideas. They're kind of racist rantings, really. I mean, it's very embarrassing.
It's odd. And I also think that the double whammy is the idea of furnishing that with pictures of people, one of whom seemed to be absolutely fine with the idea of raping white women, which is a massive problem. Again, you just can't get away with that unless seemingly you're Dawn Butler. I will stress she has now apologised and edited the video, but it went out. Right, thank you very much, both of you. Cheers. That is the campaign group Don't Divide Us, Alka Sigal Cuthbert there, and Labour activist and writer Aisha Ali Khan. Thank you so much. Right, coming up, as my fundraiser for Friends of the Elderly has hit more than £200,000, I'm going to be speaking to a veteran and a pensioner who fought for our country but is now terrified that he could freeze to death this winter. And it's stories like this that make your donations all the more important. But first, Keir Starmer's decision to give up the Chagos Islands up to Mauritius has been, absolutely slammed, and rightly so. Tory leadership hopeful James Cleverly, he branded the decision weak. But to be fair, hang on a second, because it wasn't Cleverly Foreign Secretary when negotiations over the islands actually started. So should he shoulder some of the blame? Conservative MP Mark Francois, he doesn't think so, I don't think. He's laying the blame squarely at Labour's door. Well, we'll find out when he joins me next.
Hello, good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, as we head into the weekend, things are going to turn increasingly unsettled with some outbreaks of rain, but there's not going to be a total washout and there will still be some brighter interludes at times. To end the week, though, we do still have high pressure dominating, bringing plenty of fine and dry settled conditions before low pressure generally takes hold as we head into the weekend. Overnight, though, plenty of clear spells, which means it is going to be feeling cold, colder than last night, and we're likely to see some mist and fog. This might just be a little bit stubborn to clear at times, particularly across parts of Yorkshire. A different story in the west, though, as we start to see more and more cloud to spill into northwestern parts, even with some light rain by the time we reach Friday morning. So a bit of an unsettled start, fairly damp, just in western parts of Scotland, a few drips and drabs of rain across northern parts too. Generally drier further east, but likely rather cloudy. Similar across Northern Ireland with some outbreaks of rain just starting to push into the west. Elsewhere, though, as I say, there will be some mist and fog in places, a little bit slow to clear through tomorrow morning, but largely bright once this clears away. And here we do generally have high pressure sticking around, so still plenty of sunny spells once that fog clears in the morning, and with light winds it should feel fairly pleasant here. A different story in the northwest, though, cloud continuing to spill in here with some outbreaks of rain and turning rather blustery under those cloudier skies too. But where you do catch the sunshine with highs of 16, 17 across the south and southeast, it should still be feeling rather pleasant. As we head into the weekend, fairly similar to start, likely a chilly start across central and southern UK, perhaps some fog in the morning, but generally dry and settled. Outbreaks of rain still in the northwest, and we have this area of heavy rain just moving into the southwest later into the day. So likely to see some quite heavy downpours later in Saturday, and generally unsettled over the weekend and into next week.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets and My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This Sunday, join me, Camilla Tominey, for an exclusive interview with one of the most controversial, influential and unique political figures of our time. Boris Johnson will be in studio discussing his new memoir, Unleashed, the gripping story of how he dealt with plotting politicians, problematic princes and a pandemic. From Boris bikes to Brexit and everything else in between. This Sunday at 9:30 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Now, Keir Starmer has taken the extraordinary step of giving up the sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius, ending years of negotiations over the cluster of strategically important islands in the Indian Ocean. The islands have been British-owned since 1814, but have now been signed away by the Labour government in a deal that it claimed would safeguard global security. As part of that deal, the UK-US military base will remain there, but the UK government will provide a package of financial support to Mauritius. You heard that right. We're giving it away and we're paying for it. Well, I'm joined now by the Tory MP, Mark Francois. Mark, thank you very much. How much of a complete catastrophe is this, do you think, by Keir Starmer and presumably David Lammy?
On a scale of 1 to 10, I'd rate it at about 13. This is absolute strategic madness. But this was our base and Diego Garcia. The Chinese have a lot of influence over the government of Mauritius, to who we're planning to sign this over. They've invested about $1 billion in Mauritius in recent years. And in effect, this will give the Chinese a veto over the future of that base. Either they might persuade the Mauritian government by stuffing their mouths with gold to renege on the agreement, or the Mauritians might just let them build their own rival base virtually next door. In military terms, this is madness. And when we were in government, the then Defence Secretary Grant Shapps, when they did what's called the right round, when the Foreign Office proposed it last time and they asked the other involved government departments, do they consent? Grant Shapps very firmly vetoed it. I mean, I remember speaking to him about it at the time.
I'll come on to what the Tories were getting up to when it came to this. But there is an important point here, which we have now parted company with a sovereign bit of British territory without it being discussed in Parliament. What's going on there? Should we have a vote on this?
Absolutely. In fact, Robert Jenrick, I declare an interest. I'm supporting Robert for the leadership. But Robert Jenrick, in the last couple of hours, has come out and called for a vote. Now, fortunately, on Tuesday, we have what's called an Opposition Day debate in Parliament, where the opposition can choose the motion, the subject for debate, and the motion to be voted on. And Robert has said, we, the Conservatives, if we're going to be an effective opposition, should use that debate on Tuesday to debate this and then force them to vote on it. It is outrageous that with the House coming back on Monday anyway, the government chose to announce this when the House wasn't sitting, quite deliberately. The Speaker privately must be going completely bananas about it.
Well, I suspect because one of the excuses that was made was that, well, it's the general election in Mauritius tomorrow. So hang on a minute. Have we now got a Labour government that appears to care more about the political process in Mauritius than it does about in our own country. Can I put this to you? This is in Guido Fawkes. Keir Starmer's friend is Mauritius's chief legal advisor. I mean, this is absolutely astonishing stuff, this. You know, Philippe Sands KC, and by the way, you know, at Painter, there's no indication this chap's done anything wrong whatsoever. It's his job. It's his job, right? But, I mean, look, Guido Fawkes can reveal that Starmer's close friend, Philippe Sands KC, is Mauritius's chief legal advisor. There are questions to answer there, surely.
Well, Guido describes him, I think, in that post, which I saw, as a close friend of Keir Starmer. Now, if that is true, all the more reason we need to debate this in the House of Commons on Tuesday. That's meant to be the fulcrum of the nation. Why have Labour given this away for nothing? Well, in fact, it's
we're
worse
paying
than
for
that.
it.
We're going to have, sorry, you're right, we're going to have to pay to lease it back. And by the way, who's going to pay the rent? Which government department will pay the rent? Will it be the MOD, whose budget is massively stretched? Will it be the Foreign Office? It was the Foreign Office's bright idea all along.
Wow.
I mean, it's absolute madness. We're going to give this away for nothing, and then we're going to pay for the privilege of renting back a base that we already own.
And they say, look, it's OK, because we've got this base on some kind of, whatever it is, 99-year or 100-year lease. Well, didn't we have Hong Kong on a similar premise to that? And the last time I checked, the Chinese didn't seem to respect that much either.
Well, that was, yes, but that was before China was run by a man called Xi Jinping, who has threatened Taiwan, who make like 90% of the world's high-end semiconductors, at least in the Western world. That was before Xi Jinping came to power. If they lean on the Mauritians, which I'm sure is what they'll do, the Mauritians could rip up that agreement. And then what are we going to do?
Exactly.
But the reason why Labour have been so underhand about this, I think you've just given the game away, is there seem to be some close friendships involved in all of this. And we need to be able to have a debate in Parliament and ask questions about this and then force a vote on it. So in that sense, I must say, I think Robert Jenrick is absolutely right.
Look, you've mentioned Robert Jenrick there. You declared an interest, fair enough.
Yes.
Another leadership candidate for the Tories is James Cleverly, and I'm just going to bring this tweet up now. So James Cleverly says, week, Labour lied to get into office, said they'd be whiter than white, said they wouldn't put up taxes, said they'd stand up to the EU, said they'd be patriotic, all lies, and then obviously the article underneath it, UK hands sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. Now, he is copying it for this, Mark, because people are saying that actually this all started with James Cleverly and that James Cleverly was probably about to do this same thing. So, you know, the Tories did get the ball rolling on this, didn't they?
Well, look, I blame Labour primarily because they're the ones who seemed, you know, going to sign the deal. When David Cameron was Foreign Secretary, he realised that the Foreign Office mandarins had been trying to do this for years. And to be fair to Cameron, he basically knocked it on the head. But my understanding is what you have said is technically true. It was James Cleverly that revived these negotiations for whatever reason. But then when they got to what's called the right round within Whitehall, where they asked the other government departments for consent, it was the Defence Secretary, Grant Shapps, who very firmly vetoed it. But I think the way that you've laid out the history of it is correct. But the MOD, if you like, stood up to the Foreign Office and said, for very good strategic reasons, we mustn't do this. Why have the Labour MOD either A, consented, or B, allowed themselves to be sat on? Again, we need to investigate all of this in Parliament next Tuesday and then vote on it.
And it wasn't in the manifesto, like a lot of things. It wasn't in the manifesto. I'm going to be talking a bit more about this at the top of the 10 o'clock hour. You know, if Labour had told us that they were going to cut the winter fuel payment for pensioners, we were still going to be using migrant hotels for at least another 3 years, that they were going to borrow £3.1 billion to pay the unions, and they were going to give away a bit of British sovereign territory without shot being fired, I'm not convinced that we'll be looking at the current makeup of the House of Commons. But alas, we are where we are. Mark, thank you very much. much. Great to have you on the show, as ever. And we do look forward to you pressing this issue, along with, by the sounds of it, Robert Jenrick in Parliament, where arguably this whole thing should have been spoken about to begin with.
As long as we get the chance. Thank you very much.
Well, yeah, well, I mean, surely you should. But anyway, thank you. Mark Francois there, Tory MP. Cheers. Right, OK, look, hey, what do you make of this? I will just stress again, and I do want to make this very clear, there is no indication that this lawyer for Mauritius, Philippe Sands, has done anything wrong whatsoever. It just appears to be that there is some kind of friendship link between him and the Prime Minister, which I think many people might regard as being quite interesting. But coming up, yeah, we are going to be talking in a little bit more detail about this. Are we going to be handing the Falklands back to the Argentines? Are we going to be wrapping up the Elgin marbles, shipping them back off to the Greeks, are we? I'll give you my take at 10 p.m. But first, thanks to your generosity, my fundraiser has now hit more than £200,000. It's for Friends of the Elderly. I'm going to be speaking to a pensioner who also happens to be a veteran, who's terrified that the winter fuel payment cut will mean he has to stop giving his fellow veterans lifts to hospital appointments. And stories like that to make your donations all the more important. JustGiving.com/page/Save Our Seniors. I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained. I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
So I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm going to see your show, Behind the Shoulder Pads, one night only at the Adelphi Theatre, October the 22nd. You're talking about your extraordinary life. Stage, screen, published author, 19
TV,
books, TV, most important.
Yeah.
Is there anyone who's managed to straddle, 7, 8 decades in showbiz and still be at the top?
Yes, I was thinking about that the other day because somebody said, the last of good. There is a Shirley MacLaine.
Sure.
She started the same time as me.
Right.
Sophia Loren.
Yeah.
She started around the same time.
She's not working much, though.
It's true, she's not, but she's still out there being, a major icon. And of course, people like Dick Van Dyke, who's just almost 100.
Yeah, he's incredible, isn't he?
I'm a mere babe next to him.
Yeah, you are. But and I was thinking about, you've written some extraordinary, wicked, waspish diaries, which of course you can because you've worked with so many people. Look at the names: Frank Sinatra, Lana Turner, Elizabeth Taylor, Dean Martin, Gregory Peck,
Richard Burton,
Paul Newman. The list goes on.
Gene Kelly,
and Gene
my favourite.
Was he your favourite?
Yes.
Why?
Because I saw him in a movie when I was a little girl called For Me and My Gal with Judy Garland, and I just fell in love with him. It's such a cute movie. Well, they don't make movies like that anymore. And then I was lucky enough when I first went to Hollywood at age 20 to meet him and literally hang out with him and his friends. And then I put him in a movie with me that I produced. He played my husband in a movie called Sins. And he was wonderful. He was really wonderful.
The People's Channel.
This Sunday, join me, Camilla Tominey, for an exclusive interview with one of the most controversial, influential and unique political figures of our time. Boris Johnson will be in studio discussing his new memoir, Unleashed, the gripping story of how he dealt with plotting politicians, problematic princes and a pandemic. From Boris bikes to Brexit and everything else in between. This Sunday at 9:30 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. I would like to say a massive thank you to you, actually, because my fundraiser for Friends of the Elderly has now hit more than £200,000. £203,553 to be precise. The target is £260,000 because that's the amount of money that Friends of the Elderly gave away in grants last year. They really do help out the elderly when they're in times of need because, frankly, nobody else is going to, are they? You can go to justgiving.com/page/Save Our Seniors. If you've got a couple of quid spare, we'd really appreciate it. So thank you very much. But, yes, so I am going to be introducing to the fray now a veteran and a pensioner, a chap called Dave Bye from Clacton in Essex. He fought for this country, and now, unfortunately, he feels as though he's having to fight against Keir Starmer. Dave used his winter fuel allowance payment to help drive fellow veterans to hospital appointments that they were unable to make themselves. But now he might have to stop that because of what we're seeing withdrawn from him. Very pleased to say Dave joins me now. Dave, look, great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Would you mind just telling us how you feel now after your years of service for this country, being in this position?
Well, it's really annoying because over the years we've seen different things be eradicated and taken away from us in various ways. I'm now living on a state pension and a small pension I get from the forces, and that puts me just over the top for getting this winter fuel payment. But I don't actually use a winter fuel payment to pay for my fuel. It helps me help other people, especially veterans, which I'm visiting on a regular basis. I also help run a veterans breakfast club, where we're feeding veterans and people that are homeless as well. Any food that we've got, we take out to those. But all that is going to have to be not stopped altogether, but certainly eased off, because the £200 that a lot of us get, we put into that. Whether it's for fuel, whether it's for food and everything else. And all Keir Starmer is doing is he's penalising not just me, but all the people that we help. And he sat there in his £200,000 wage bill that him and his wife are getting between them, and also his freebies. And that was awfully good of him to give back £6,000, wasn't it? Aha. He's got £10 million in the bank. Why is he accepting freebies?
Well, quite. A lot to go out there, Dave. Yeah, yes, OK. I'm not entirely sure if he's got 10 million quid, but I do take your point. He doesn't really need to be taking freebies, and he certainly doesn't need to be taking a couple of £100 off you. The key point for me there, Dave, is that you were prepared to give your life for this country. You were prepared to make the ultimate sacrifice, weren't you? And now, not that you're in, desperate personal need. I'm not trying to paint you out as some kind of charity case or anything, Dave, but, now you are having a bit of help withdrawn. It just doesn't seem quite fair.
Well, this is it. I'm now the government that's supposed to be supporting me and looking after me. I'm now fighting to try and get them to do their job. And that is, as far as I'm concerned, that is their job. They're running the country, but they're also looking after people that are less well off than themselves. And they're not doing it. Or if they are doing it, they're doing it to the wrong people. And that's all I'm going to say on that matter.
Well, are you worried, Dave, about this winter coming up? So, there's going to be people that you help, other veterans and other members of the community.
Yeah. Even I'm going to suffer from it. I feel the cold. I'm 77, right? I've got diabetes. I've got diabetes. I've got a heart condition. Oh. I have to. And I have to look after myself and keep myself warm.
Exactly.
But if I'm trying to help other people by doing the things that I do, I'm going to neglect myself. And if I neglect myself, who's going to look after me? Certainly not Keir Starmer.
Well, look, Dave. This is absolutely harrowing. See, it's the injustice of it all, Dave. You make the point there about the fact that we've got money for everyone else, right? We have. Clearly, because we're dishing it out. We're dishing it out to absolutely everybody. I personally would much rather see not just money but more resources go to people like you, Dave. The idea that people who've been prepared to, if called upon, lay their lives down for this country.
They're still doing it. They're still doing it.
And still are doing it. Look, Dave, can I just say a massive thank you? What's the name of the breakfast club that you've got as well? Because I think people, when we pay you your fee tonight, which we will, then we'll give it to your breakfast club. But what is it?
Well, it's the Clacton Veterans Breakfast Club.
All right, mate. OK, well, look, thank you very much for coming on. Thank you for making the time for us this evening. It's great to have you on the show. I'd like to check in with you as well in a few weeks' time or a couple of months' time. So you take care, Dave. Look, if you've heard Dave's story there and you feel, compelled to do so, then please go to justgiving.com/page/save our seniors. And the target there is £260,000. That is the amount of money that Friends of the Elderly gave out in grants last year to help pay people's heating, to help pay people's bills, to help take them to doctor's appointments, to fill the void that is currently being left at the moment. So justgiving.com/page/save our seniors. And tomorrow I'll tell you how I've got on this week living off £15 for a food bill as well, which is something that some pensioners are having to do. Coming up, the Labour donor scandal has deepened even more because their sugar daddy has apparently meddled in Iraqi elections. And also on top of that, can you believe, well, I certainly can, that we've given off some British territory without a shot being fired? It's got anything to do with Starmer's lawyer mate.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, as we head into the weekend, things are going to turn increasingly unsettled with some outbreaks of rain, but there's not going to be a total washout and there will still be some brighter interludes at times. To end the week, though, we do still have high pressure dominating, bringing plenty of fine and dry settled conditions before low pressure generally takes hold as we head into the weekend. Overnight, though, plenty of clear spells, which means it is going to be feeling cold, colder than last night, and we're likely to see some mist and fog. This might just be a little bit stubborn to clear at times, particularly across parts of Yorkshire. A different story in the west, though, as we start to see more and more cloud to spill into northwestern parts, even with some light rain by the time we reach Friday morning. So a bit of an unsettled start, fairly damp just in western parts of Scotland, a few drips and drabs of rain across northern parts too. Generally drier further east, but likely rather cloudy. Similar across Northern Ireland with some outbreaks of rain just starting to push into the west. Elsewhere, though, as I say, there will be some mist and fog in places, a little bit slow to clear through tomorrow morning, but largely bright once this clears away. And here we do generally have high pressure sticking around, so still plenty of sunny spells once that fog clears in the morning. And with light winds, it should feel fairly pleasant here. A different story in the northwest, though, cloud continuing to spill in here with some outbreaks of rain and turning rather blustery under those cloudier skies too. But where you do catch the sunshine with highs of 16, 17 across the south and southeast, it should still be feeling rather pleasant. As we head into the weekend, fairly similar to start, likely a chilly start across central and southern UK, perhaps some fog in the morning, but generally dry and settled. Outbreaks of rain still in the northwest, and we have this area of heavy rain just moving into the southwest later into the day. So likely to see some quite heavy downpours later in Saturday, and generally unsettled over the weekend and into next week.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
I stand here also as a black man whose ancestors were taken in chains from Africa at the barrel of a gun.
David Lammy and Keir Starmer give away British sovereign territory without a single shot being fired to right the wrongs of the past. It's a massive strategic victory for China and... Well, what's Starmer going to give away next? The Falklands, Gibraltar, and...
Very, very happy to be on Camilla Tominey's show, Boris Johnson on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got Boris, the BBC's loss is our gain, plus Lord Ali allegedly meddled in the Iraqi elections. This Labour donor scandal just gets weirder and weirder by the day. And what, I wonder, could possibly be on the front pages? Well, I'll tell you when I reintroduce my wonderful panel for tonight. Political commentator Jess Gill, Conservative peer Lord Bailey and former Labour advisor Matthew Larser. Oh, and yes, please, can you tell me what happens next here? But we're going to give it away then. Get ready, Britain, here we go. Have Keir Starmer and David Lammy committed treason? Next.
Good evening, the top stories. The UK has announced it's giving up sovereignty of the Chagos Islands after more than half a century. The deal, reached after years of negotiations, will see Britain hand over the Chagos Islands to China ally Mauritius. It includes the tropical atoll of Diego Garcia, which is home to a military base used by the UK and the US. Under the agreement, the base will remain under UK and US jurisdiction for at least the next 99 years. But Conservative leadership candidates reacted angrily, with former Foreign Secretary James Cleverly labelling the government as weak. And Tom Tugendhat says the move undermines UK security.
What it does is it means that although the airbase, which is jointly UK-US operated, is maintained on a 99-year lease, the other outlying islands go back to Mauritian sovereignty. Now, there are many other countries which will be interested in a permanent base in the Indian Ocean, China being one of them.
In other news, Downing Street says the Prime Minister has paid back more than £6,000 worth of gifts and hospitality received since becoming Prime Minister, following a backlash over donations. It comes as the Labour peer at the centre of a row over donations to Sir Keir Starmer has been placed under investigation by the House of Lords standards watchdog. Lord Ali faces a probe over what is being called the alleged non-registration of interests. He's one of the party's biggest donors and the largest donor to the Prime Minister. Now, the Israeli military has warned people to evacuate a city and other communities in southern Lebanon, signalling a wider offensive following a ground operation launched earlier this week against the terror group Hezbollah. The IDF has also claimed this evening in a post on X that it's killed a senior Hezbollah leader, Mahmoud Youssef Anisi. Now, this comes as at least 9 people were killed in an Israeli airstrike in central Beirut. The Israeli military says it was a precision attack on the building which they say housed a Hezbollah-affiliated health centre. Meanwhile, Hezbollah says it's detonated a bomb against Israeli forces infiltrating a southern Lebanese village. Now, fresh explosions have been heard this evening in Hezbollah's stronghold in southern Beirut, as Israel says it has struck the group's intelligence headquarters. Meanwhile, more than 150 British nationals have left Lebanon on the first UK government-chartered flight out of the country. Foreign Secretary David Lammy confirmed there will be additional chartered flights to help those who want to leave, and he warned about the volatile situation. And a 47-year-old man has become the first ever person to be sentenced for conspiracy to commit female genital mutilation. Emad Kaki, who lived in Nottingham at the time that he offended, arranged for a young girl to travel to Iraq, where she would have been subjected to FGM and forced into marriage. He's been sentenced to 4.5 years. And those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, I'll have more news in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Today, the Labour Party parted with a bit of British sovereign territory without a single shot being fired. Keir Starmer has taken so many freebies he's decided to give one away himself, the Chagos Islands. Now, it turns out that Keir Starmer's close friend, Philippe Sands KC, is the chief legal advisor for Mauritius, who Starmer's just handed the islands over to. Now, do you think that's a coincidence? But it goes even deeper. Mr. Sands is one of the many founders of Matrix Chambers, which also happens to be where Starmer's other close friend, Richard Hermer, was plucked from to serve as Attorney General. Now, he appears to be very pro-Palestine. He reportedly pushed the ICJ to consider whether Israel was an apartheid state, and he reportedly represented the IRA's Gerry Adams. So Starmer has made him our government's top legal advisor. Mauritius is allied strongly to China. In fact, Chinese direct investment in Mauritius was £35 million in 2020, taking its total cumulative investment to a whopping £667 million, more than 18% of Mauritius's total imports came from China that year. So Starmer and David Lammy have just handed China a huge boost, haven't they? They did not debate this in Parliament before signing off on it, which implies that they were trying to avoid the democratic process. They told the Speaker of the House, Lindsay Hoyle, that they wanted to get this sorted now because the general election in Mauritius starts tomorrow. So they seem to care more about a foreign parliament than our own. They didn't consult the people of the Chagos Islands, apparently, who said that they only found out about it through the media. Apparently, this deal, quote, addresses the wrongs of the past. Well, it's something, isn't it, that our Foreign Secretary is utterly, utterly obsessed with.
But I say to the Russian representative on his phone as I speak that I stand here also as a black man whose ancestors were taken in chains from Africa at the barrel of a gun to be enslaved, whose ancestors rose up and fought in a great rebellion of the enslaved.
But what historic wrongs are we talking about here with the old Chagos Islands? Because literally nobody lived on the Chagos Islands until the French and then the British arrived. So ask yourselves this. 91 days ago, Labour elected with a loveless landslide. If they'd have told you during the election campaign that they're going to let pensioners freeze to death this winter, spend £3.1 billion on union pay rises, continue to use migrant hotels for another 3 years at least, and give away sovereign British territory, would anybody have really voted for them? David Lammy was apparently in Dublin today. There we go. Is he on his way to Belfast to hand over Northern Ireland, is he? What happens to the Falklands now? To Gibraltar? I honestly give it 2 years before the Elgin marbles are back with the Greeks. People are banging on about James Cleverly starting this process. Now, yeah, OK, all right, fair enough. But Starmer and his weird lawyer mates finished it off, didn't they? Britain is weaker today because of Starmer and Lammy. Our enemies are now stronger. This isn't soft power, this is just soft. Do you think that Keir Starmer and David Lammy really are on the side of Britain? Let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. We've got political commentator Jess Gill, Conservative peer Lord Bailey, and ex-Labour Party advisor Matthew Larzer. Sean, what do you make of all of this, then?
I think there's two things to be said. There is no doubt this is a security faux pas. China are a very aggressive nation in the ascendancy, throwing their weight around, and this base was an important part of the sort of Western world's ability to contain China, and I think that's a very serious thing. And 99 years is a drop in the ocean in the life of a nation, and also it could give China the ability to corral that basing by getting one of their own closer. But the other thing that this brings to mind is much closer to home. Too much power has been taken away from Parliament. And it doesn't matter which side of the political divide you sit on. We have too many quangos that have power that goes unquestioned. And this tactic of doing this outside of Parliament is wrong. This should have been debated in Parliament. Something so fundamental as this absolutely should have been debated and voted on in Parliament.
We've just lost. Britain's got smaller today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a symptom of Britain being in decline. Britain has become weaker and weaker. And it's not just on the international scale. It's also at home as well. What reason is there to be proud of being British? I mean, mass immigration has just, gone out of control. The economy is in tatters. I think a lot of people don't have a sense of community. I mean, I don't think China needs to disable us by taking territory. I think they just need to look at home. And I think it shows that our government has actually no power. It doesn't believe in the British people, and in fact, as shown by the words of David Lammy, the government has become quite self-hating.
Matthew, do you think it's a coincidence that the top lawyer for Mauritius happens to be a mate of Starmer's?
Yes, I do, because this wasn't a process that was started by Keir Starmer. As you quite rightly said, it was a process that has been going on for some time, because there is an issue under international law about the ownership of it. I'm glad that we've got a 99-year lease on the base, and I'm glad, that we'll still be able to use it.
What was the need to do this? Was there clamour? Was there clamour? Because there wasn't.
Well, there was a clamour from Mauritius. Now, whether or not that should have been listened to is a question. There has actually been some pushback today from a few Labour MPs about this, partly because it's complicated, because basically because the people of the Chagosian people don't regard themselves as Mauritians. So that seems to me to be an issue, that you're not respecting self-determination in a way. So I think there will be more questions asked about this, going forward.
Historical wrongs. I mean, they don't believe that they're Mauritian. So you've just moved that ownership to one of the group of people.
There's a big chance they'll be Chinese fairly soon.
Yeah.
So look, the real issue here is it actually doesn't matter who started the process. This is still a decision made by the Keir Starmer government, because they, of course, could have reversed that decision. And it sounds like, to an onlooker, that it wasn't even a huge clamour in the country. So it wasn't like they're having to say to Chagorians, we're not going to do what you want. Yeah. Actually, they may have just dropped them in it, because China are very clear. They want to dominate anybody they're concerned with.
I would absolutely love to negotiate against Keir Starmer. I'd tell him exactly what I want and then I'd get it. Yeah. It's unbelievable. The unions, straight off the bat. I mean, I shudder to think what on earth he's been chatting to Ursula von der Leyen now. I'm surprised he hasn't emerged wearing an EU flag since that meeting. What have they gone there? They've just gone... The Mauritians go, yeah, I do really want that, actually. Oh, yeah, fine. The Elgin Marbles will be on their way to Greece in minutes. Gibraltar will be handed back to the Spanish. I mean, the civil service...
Gibraltar will not be handed back to the Spanish.
Oh, really? Well, it's interesting, because David Lammy said to put a tweet out not so long ago saying that he was there to get a good deal for Gibraltar. What's the deal?
That's because the Tories left without doing a post-Brexit deal. So the Gibraltarians are very anxious for a deal to be done with Spain on the border, and various other issues. That's not a giveaway. That's what Gibraltar wants.
Well, I mean, given David Lammy's history track record with geography, I'd be surprised if he actually knew where it was, to be honest with you. But do you think that this is the kind of sign that Labour are actually just prepared to give away things to our enemies?
Yeah, absolutely. I think also an underrated part of this is the fact that the UK has been pressured time and time again by the UN to give up our territories. In this case, I think it was like the International Court of Justice launched an appeal, launched a case against the UK to get this island, and I think that needs to be noted. The fact that we have this globalist regime going against the UK and our empire, or like the territories that we have, what remains of it. And the reality is that if you want to talk about like real politics, there is always going to be an empire. There is always going to be a ruling country that's going to have sovereignty over other countries. And if the UK, if Great Britain gives up our sovereignty, then China's going to take over.
Well, Sean, China are going to be very happy about this. Russia, presumably, will be very happy about stuff like this. How does it make us look on the world stage? 91 days into a Labour government, and we've parted with a bit of sovereign territory without consulting Parliament, without consulting the people that live there. I mean, this is quite a bad look on the world stage, isn't it?
I tell you why this is a very bad look. I bet you the Japanese are not happy about this, and everybody else in the region who's afraid of China, a very strident nation. Why it's important to keep China contained in that side, because you have another nuclear power nation next door to them, India, who also will not be happy about this and will be having to step up their...
And the islands are closer to India than they are to Mauritius.
Step up their efforts. So we've made the world a more dangerous place today. But here's a small homebrew part I want people to focus on. This is why it's important who we select and elect. If you have a group of people who hate Britain, hate its past and hate its future, that's why they try to undo our past, and that leads to a very poor future.
Does David Lammy and Keir Starmer hate Britain?
Absolutely not. They're very proud of Britain and they're very proud of our past. No, I mean, look, David Lammy spoke about his family history of slavery, which actually, it wasn't just about Britain. I mean, that wasn't like having a go at Britain, that was having a go at the slave trade, of which obviously Britain had a proud record in bringing to a close the Atlantic slave trade.
There seems to be a correlation there, Matthew, with people on the left and despising Britain there.
No, I think there are some people on the far left who, Mr Corbyn was one of them, who seem to think that everything our enemies did was right and question things like...
The chap that our Prime Minister wanted to get elected twice, yeah.
Well, the chap that our Prime Minister made sure that the party was changed afterwards, and I personally campaigned against.
Keir Starmer was very, very clear how supportive he was of of your man there. Very clear.
Look, I think he was loyal to the Labour Party, but it was clear the British people knew what they were doing when they didn't vote for Jeremy Corbyn.
OK, all right. Look, again, I do want to, we will tread quite carefully on this because I don't want to. I don't want to, suck anyone into this unfairly, but I think given everything that we've got going on with the old cronyism scandal and alleged corruption, Donorgate and everything, it is a little bit rum, I think, that Keir Starmer's one of his supposedly very good mates happens to be the lawyer for Mauritius. The guy who's our Attorney General now, who again reportedly has represented some incredibly fruity characters like Jerry Adams and people like that, it is now Starmer's appointed him there. That doesn't scream to me as though you are mates with people who are on the side of Britain.
Yeah, I think with Keir Starmer, he has so much lack of character, you kind of have to have someone to fill it in. So it's no wonder that his mates are influencing his policy. And I think, again, even though the word talks about it beforehand, of course Starmer had an active play in this. I think there's no doubt in it. And time again, we see that his policies are being influenced by other people.
So does this have to go for a vote in Parliament?
This absolutely has to go for a vote in Parliament. I just want to throw a teeny bit of balance.
Yeah.
Keir Starmer can't help what his mates are up to into. It is legitimate for him to have this man as a friend. You can't be Keir Starmer and go through life and not meet anybody else in a big job.
And you've got the cab rank principle of barristers as well.
The cab rank principle is a little... I've defended Keir Starmer on that before, but Keir Starmer has to be careful about which positions he puts people in who have a history. That's different. Having a mate is one thing. Put them in a big job... I
think my overarching point with that was that when I saw that article come out today about it, I thought with everything else that we've got going on, and we're going to talk about, by the way, in a few minutes' time, some more revelations that have emerged on the front pages, so make sure you stay tuned for that. When you look at all of that going on, and then all of a sudden it just comes out, well, apparently Keir Starmer was mates with the guys Mauritius. You look at the Attorney General, you just think, at the very least, it's bad timing for the lad.
Yeah,
at the very least.
But your mate's always going to have opinions. Some of my mates have got opinions on stuff that I don't agree with.
And Philippe Sands has been clear about what he's done. He appeared before Parliamentary Committee and he made that clear.
The incredibly skillful lawyer Philippe Sands has done anything wrong, and I would like to just stress that.
He writes good books.
So there we go. Anyway, right, time for the Great British Giveaway. No care, this isn't the Chagos Islands. And it's your chance now to win the equivalent of having an extra £3,000 in your bank account every month for the next year. A whopping £36,000 in tax-free cash. Here's all the details to make that money yours.
Good luck.
Coming up, I've got all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Oh, and is calling a woman bird sexual harassment? My panel will take on that very soon. But next, the Labour donation scandal has got even worse today after it emerged that the party's sugar daddy, Lord Ali, apparently meddled in the Iraqi elections. So Reform UK spokesperson Anne Widdecombe thinks the scandal could get even murkier. She joins me live next.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This Sunday, join me, Camilla Tominey, for an exclusive interview with one of the most controversial, influential and unique political figures of our time. Boris Johnson will be in studio discussing his new memoir, Unleashed, the gripping story of how he dealt with plotting politicians, problematic princes and a pandemic. From Boris bikes to Brexit and everything else in between. This Sunday at 9:30 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
And we've got a treat not only to have you here, but you've brought loads of exclusives for us this morning.
Well,
your chat with Robert Jenrick.
Just for you, Ellie. Yeah, Robert Jenrick, of course, is the front-runner to be Tory leader.
He is now, yeah.
Amongst Tory MPs. Yeah, and she's been talking to us for my podcast, Chopper's Political Podcast, about immigration, about criminals being released from prison. Also, really importantly,
most importantly, some would say.
Yeah, biscuits. Now,
biscuits.
He was, I should explain to viewers, Robert Jenrick during the COVID pandemic had to pull together a hamper of goods for those isolating, and he put in a special biscuit.
Yes.
Here's what he had to say on the podcast. We'll move on to the future and what your plans are. Your biggest achievement in government, what do you reckon it was? I know what it was.
Well, you go first.
Yeah, custard creams.
I thought you were going to say that I saved a penny. That was another one of our campaigns, yeah.
But custard creams, briefly, I mean, you were the community secretary. You had to provide food boxes during the COVID pandemic, and what did you put into those food boxes?
Custard creams, the people's favourite biscuit.
What else
Absolutely.
is there? The people's favourite biscuit. Now, across the country...
Yeah,
well,
Aidan.
Coffees are being dropped across the country.
Yeah,
is that really the people's favourite biscuit, Aidan?
Listen, you'll never change my opinion. I like shortbread, but I like it homemade. With a sprinkling of sugar. Listen, I'm type 1 diabetic. I had to be quite moderate in terms of my intake, but goodness me.
I mean,
a nice cup of tea.
that's a good one.
It's about the shape as well. If you show, some more intelligent biscuit companies, they will make shapes of biscuit that fit into the tea. But it's nothing worse than when you put it into a narrow cup and it won't
go in, will it? And you can't hit the...
So you like the triangular...
Not really triangular.
Fingers.
Just something a bit elongated that I can turn sideways and dip in like that.
Got you.
GB News, the People's Channel. Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight. Coming up, I've got the first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, and there is yet another scandal on there for you to hear about, so it's fantastic. Breaking tonight, in fact, The Sun is reporting that Labour is facing a fresh row after offering companies breakfast with the business secretary in return for £30,000. The party invited bosses to a restaurant for the rare chance to gain insight from Jonathan Reynolds in return for a sponsorship of the meal. Can I just say that would be a rare chance, because Jonathan Reynolds, I don't believe, has ever run a business or been involved in a business, particularly. So the idea that a business leader would gain insight from our current business secretary would be rare indeed. But it comes after Sir Keir Starmer was yesterday humiliated into coughing up more than £6,000 to repay freebies. The Prime Minister is paying back tickets for Taylor Swift and the Doncaster races, but is keeping suits worth £32,000 for himself, paid for, of course, by the old sugar daddy Lord Ali, as well as glasses and Lady Starmer's dresses. She can't go without those, can she? The announcement comes as Lord Ali, the Labour peer at the heart of the donation scandal, is to be investigated by the Lords Commissioner over a potential breach of the Code of Conduct. And it gets worse, because it emerged last night that he bailed out a Labour baroness who was found to have wrongly claimed £125,000. Oh, yes, and today it was revealed that he was dispatched by then Prime Minister Tony Blair to work on the Iraqi election in 2005. He was installed in Blair's pick for Iraqi leader Iyad Alawi's office, and he helped Alawi to run his election campaign, which, by the way, was a complete disaster because he only won a mere 13.8% of the vote. Joining me now is Reform UK spokesperson Anne Widdecombe. Anne, thank you very much. I mean, the latest thing, 30 grand to gain valuable business insight from a bloke who's never run a business, and you can have a croissant while you're there. I'm sorry, what's going on at this circus?
Well, that one can be summed up simply as cash for access. I mean, that's what it comes down to. You know, you can talk to the business secretary if you really desperately want to, as long as you pay for the privilege. But you know, these things, there's a very, very thin line between what is classed as acceptable and what isn't. I think, without knowing the detail of it, this looks at first sight, at any rate, as if it was straightforwardly cash for access.
And look, you just film it. You know more about this than me. Is that the kind of thing that you resign over? Is it the kind of thing that you have investigated?
I doubt if anybody's going to resign. I mean, Starmer hasn't resigned. I don't see how he can reasonably ask his underlings to resign. I should think this will be a government that is very short of resignations indeed.
OK, I mean, I'm just going to read a little bit more detail into this. So Labour is now facing a fresh row after offering companies breakfast with the business secretary in return for £30,000. So, given the fact that our business secretary, I don't believe, has a long and illustrious history in business, presumably you would just be looking to bend his ear to get something out of him, not to learn from him, which is bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah, usually if these meetings are sensibly organised, and very often they're organised by the businesses themselves with no question of donating money to any party. And generally it's supposed to be a two-way process, and government will say what it's thinking about, and it will take an input from business. But of course, you then run into trouble. Then let's forget Tony Blair and Formula One. When suddenly Formula One was exempted from a piece of legislation that applied to everybody else.
So in a pitch prepared by the Labour Party's commercial team and emailed yesterday, invitees to the Ivy restaurant in Manchester are promised a rare chance to gain insights. For £15,000, you can have your picture with Jonathan Reynolds. I think I've got my picture with him because we did a show together, so our screens... It'd be like this, Anne. It'd be like this, wouldn't it? Us two together on the screen at the same time. 15 grand, that would set you back. Sorry, but this is remarkable. This is also the same Jonathan Reynolds who allegedly went to Glastonbury, paid for by YouTube, and then the day after did not hike taxes on companies like YouTube. I mean, it's all a bit whiffy, isn't it, Anne?
Yeah, so there's always that very famous maxim that you must not only be above suspicion, you must be seen to be above suspicion. And once you do something that can be represented or even misrepresented as an absence of probity, then you've got a very big problem. But I must say, why would anybody pay $15,000 for a photograph? I mean, I used to get them with Mrs. Thatcher for free. I get them with Nigel Farage for free. Why would anybody be paying to be photographed?
Well, you'd show that photograph to someone and they'd say, "Who's that?" So that would be an issue, I imagine. So just before I move on to something else, there's a lot of question marks about Lord Ali in particular. People going, well, look, he's already a lord, so what could he want? He doesn't need anything. The story broke today about him allegedly being involved in the Iraqi election campaign in 2005. What is it, do you think, that Lord Ali would gain? Because the line is, he just wants a Labour government. He just wanted everyone to look nice, and he wanted a Labour government. What do you think it is that he stood to gain out of all of this?
I think he wants the Prime Minister's ear, and I think he wants to keep the Prime Minister's ear. As you say, he's already in the Lords, he's already very wealthy, hasn't got anything to gain on those sorts of fronts. But I think, there are people who like to have influence, and I think he is one of them. And the question is, does he have influence in exchange for all these donations and gifts? Does he have influence? That's a big question.
Well, it is a big question. And I suppose it's what you define as influence, isn't it? I mean, you could argue that being dispatched by Tony Blair to Iraq in 2005 to help out with their preferred pick to be the next leader of Iraq is influence. You could also argue that as a successful businessman with wealth, etc., which, congratulations to him, that having any kind of influence or a heads up on changes to tax proposals, etc., would be useful. No indication that that's happened. But I do have to ask you, Anne, what would reform do in terms of donations? Yes, so let's say Nigel Farage was Prime Minister and somebody is willing to pay Nigel £30,000 for breakfast, which I'm sure they would. I mean, are we saying that you'd say no to that? Because with absolute respect, I'm not sure he would say no, would he?
Well, as I've said already right at the start of the programme, the line is thin, and my line is always, let the business organisations themselves organise that. Let them charge what they want to charge. Rather than a political party saying, you get this if you pay that. Much better to offer it free and then hope that they donate afterwards.
Yeah, OK. Well, look, Anne, thank you very much, and not just for your comments, but your insight as well. That is Anne Widdecombe, their Reform UK spokesperson. Great to have you on the show. Coming up, we'll have more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. There is more detail, believe it or not, on this Jonathan Reynolds story that I've got in front of me here. It is on the front of the Sun. I'll tell you about that. I also want you to ask me, tell me even, either way, what happens next here? All that and much more still to come. Stay tuned.
Hello, good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, as we head into the weekend, things are going to turn increasingly unsettled with some outbreaks of rain, but there's not going to be a total washout and there will still be some brighter interludes at times. To end the week, though, we do still have high pressure dominating, bringing plenty of fine and dry settled conditions before low pressure generally takes hold as we head into the weekend. Overnight, though, plenty of clear spells, which means it is going to be feeling cold, colder than last night, and we're likely to see some mist and fog. This might just be a little bit stubborn to clear at times, particularly across parts of Yorkshire. A different story in the west, though, as we start to see more and more cloud to spill into northwestern parts, even with some light rain by the time we reach Friday morning. So a bit of an unsettled start, fairly damp just in western parts of Scotland, a few drips and drabs of rain across northern parts too. Generally drier further east, but likely rather cloudy. Similar across Northern Ireland with some outbreaks of rain just starting to push into the west. Elsewhere, though, as I say, there will be some mist and fog in places, a little bit slow to clear through tomorrow morning, but largely bright once this clears away. And here we do generally have high pressure sticking around, so still plenty of sunny spells once that fog clears in the morning, and with light winds it should feel fairly pleasant here. A different story in the northwest, though, cloud continuing to spill in here with some outbreaks of rain and turning rather blustery under those cloudier skies too, but where you do catch the sunshine with highs of 16, 17 across the south and southeast, it should still be feeling rather pleasant. As we head into the weekend, fairly similar to start, likely a chilly start across central and southern UK, perhaps some fog in the morning, but generally dry and settled. Outbreaks of rain still in the northwest, and we have this area of heavy rain just moving into the southwest later into the day. So likely to see some quite heavy downpours later in Saturday, and generally unsettled over the weekend and into next week.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This Sunday, join me, Camilla Tominey, for an exclusive interview with one of the most controversial, influential and unique political figures of our time. Boris Johnson will be in studio discussing his new memoir, Unleashed, the gripping story of how he dealt with plotting politicians, problematic princes and a pandemic. From Boris bikes to Brexit and everything else in between. This Sunday at 9:30 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Now it's time to bring you the first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Here they are. We start with The Sun. There is a big story on the front there about Freddie Flintoff. Good for him. He's going to be hosting Bullseye. This is, of course, him back on telly after that horror crash. There is, I would argue, with respect to Freddie Flintoff, a slightly more important story at the top of The Sun now, which is this £30,000 Labour croissant row. You can pay... It's cash for access allegations. It's straightforward cash for access allegations. Touting breakfast with the business secretary for 30 grand. We will discuss. Let's go to the Metro. Poison jab murder plot by doctor in disguise. A doctor suspected of making a chemical weapon at home disguised himself as a nurse to kill his stepfather by injecting him with poison because he stood in the way of his inheritance. A court heard. That is a paragraph that's got it all, isn't it? Let's go to the Eye. Energy price scare after Biden says Israel could attack Iran's oils. There we are. Cheers, Joe. The Daily Mail. They've gone in on the Chagos Islands. Starmer's surrender. The Chagos Islands have belonged to Britain since 1814. Labour have given it to Mauritius, which lies 1,300 miles away and is a loyal ally of China. I'm going to just whiz us over now to the Daily Telegraph, which got the picture story there is Boris Johnson, a man who was in this office just moments ago. Johnson, UK needs referendum on ECHR. In an exclusive interview, the former Prime Minister says that there is a strong case for a public vote on human rights. So there we go. Yeah, look, we're going to kick-start with what's on the front of the Sun above Freddie Flintoff. £30,000. This is cash for access, is it not, Sean, with a bloke who doesn't seem to know anything about business because he's never worked in it?
I think the problem that the Labour Party and Keir Starmer have with this is an event that they could have done for free. So lots of ministers meet business all the time with no money involved. This looks like a Labour Party event, billed in a very different way. That's landed them in some hot water. But the real problem is about the hypocrisy of it all. They spent a lot of time preaching, pointing fingers, accusing people, painting things in the worst light, which often wasn't really what went on. And now it's circling back to bite them. Keir Starmer's got a lot to answer, and this is just...
I think you're shaking your head there at the idea of hypocrisy. I mean, you know, we were told that Mr Rules was going to be squeaky clean. I mean, firstly, today, he's not followed, I would argue, the normal rules by putting this siphoning off a bit of British sovereign territory to Parliament and discussing that. And it also, there's nothing...
We don't know that it's not going to have a parliamentary vote.
There's nothing squeaky clean about this croissant.
Yeah, there is, because, look, I mean, Johnny Reynolds is the business secretary. All the ministers meet businesses, they meet, you know, charities, you know, civil organisations all the time. Let me just finish, Sean, please. This is a Labour Party event which a sponsorship request has gone out for all the parties at their party conferences. We've just seen the Tories this week.
Matthew?
They're getting what they've always got, which is they talk to ministers.
You paid £15,000 for a photograph with Jonathan Reynolds, who's not even a household name in his own home. You are not actually paying for the picture, are you? What are you paying?
You're paying. I mean, they're paying £15,000 to attend the breakfast. You've just seen all of the three parties have business days at their conferences where people pay actually around £15,000.
Well, right, because we know especially about the Labour one because those businesses wanted their money back because they felt as though they got nothing for it. So presumably the pressure would be on here for Jonathan Reynolds to deliver something, wouldn't it?
No, I think. Look, I mean, I think there were some issues about one of the particular events at Labour conference, but everybody does it for years because it's an opportunity for business to talk to politicians in that context. But I mean, you know, we heard Anne Widdecombe say they meet people for free. They meet people for free all the time. This is people wouldn't be knowing they're going to a Labour Party event.
Just do you think that if people were given the chance to vote again right now, that Labour would still win based on everything that we've seen?
Yeah, absolutely not. I think this is a slap in the face of the Labour voters who still have this idea that Labour is the party for the working class. Well, they've been, a few months in government, and time again they're showing that's not the case. There's sleaze scandals, corruption scandals, all after 14 years of claiming the Tories are the party for corruption. Now, I'm not saying the Tories are better, but the Labour Party surely aren't any better than them.
But that's the wider problem, actually. You know, Matthew and I can sit here and disagree, and there's some nuance in it. Yes, people throw events and ask for sponsorship. I think this is probably billed in a dubious way and should have been billed solely as a Labour Party event. But the real problem here is it's a plague on everyone's house. That's the real problem.
I think there is a clumsy wording in this. It came from a regional person. I think it's clumsily
debate
worded.
that, but the point is it's a plague on everybody's house because it isn't, oh, they're good, we're bad, we're good, they're bad. This just makes everybody bad. And the problem, and this is what I do put on Labour's door, they made sure they painted everything, even innocent stuff that Tories did, in this single worst light. But now everything that anybody does is in the
Sean, Tories never do anything innocent.
There you go, right there.
I'm pulling your leg. I'm pulling your leg.
Right there.
Let's whiz ourselves over onto a man who notoriously never did anything wrong. It's Boris Johnson. Boris has come out and said the UK needs a referendum on the ECHR, apparently. Sean, in favour of this?
Look, two things. Referendums tend to be very divisive and people don't like the outcome. But there's one thing I will say. We seem to think that we are not responsible enough to have our own Bill of Rights, to talk about human rights in our own way. I would say to anybody who believes that, we wrote most of that stuff. They came to Britain and talked about how does human rights look internationally, because we have the best record of human rights across all civilization since the dawning of time. So there is an argument that we need to re-look at it, but I don't know if a referendum's the way to go.
Do you want out of the ECHR?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think a referendum is needed. I think most people voted for Brexit, quite frankly, because they were fed up of the amount of people coming over, both illegal and legal. And I think having a referendum to leave the ECHR would de facto be the same as having a referendum about Brexit. I think people are fed up of referendums and they just want a government who can act.
Indeed. I mean, Matthew, look, there is a case to say that we don't really need a vote on it. We could just do it. I mean, we haven't had to have a vote on the old Chagos Islands, have we?
Well, I mean,
do what we want now.
I agree. Who was the most anti-referendum prime minister of recent times? Mrs. Thatcher, who thought that they were used by despots, basically. So I don't think we need a referendum. I personally think we should stay in the ECHR. There's clearly a case for those who think we should pull out. And if there's a government elected that wants to do that, it should just do it.
OK. Just out of interest, if we did have a referendum on the ECHR, I mean, I think you'd vote to leave, wouldn't you? What do you?
I don't know enough about it, and I want to be very careful about sending a message to the rest of the world that we're about to abandon the how we feel about human rights. Human rights today is probably more important than it's been for a century, and I think if we're going to be involved in it, we need to be firmly in the middle.
I just wonder for me whether or not the ECHR has tipped a balance away from actually protecting our human rights. And actually...
Well, we can do that anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Towards endangering us.
We don't need to leave the ECHR, for instance, to take control of immigration. We have rules, and we could change those rules, or we could just act on the one...
I made a documentary about the ECHR with Andrew Neil, which wasn't a ratings triumph, called Rights Gone Wrong, ? We started it with Andrew thinking that we should come out, and at the end he thought we should stay in, because when you actually look into it, it's not the ECHR's fault. It's blamed for a lot of sins. It was on BBC Two.
It was on BBC Two?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, miraculously, a chap changed his mind from wanting to leave the ECHR to going to...
And nobody tells Andrew what to do. The BBC management didn't dare.
Unbelievable, isn't it? Absolutely unbelievable. Who could have seen that coming? Not Stevie.
It's available on YouTube.
I'm sure it is, yeah. And, all right, just a reminder now that Boris Johnson has got an interview with Camilla Tominey, and that is going to be here on GB News on Sunday at 9:30. Yeah, exactly. There we go. Good. I knew it, didn't I? It's almost like I've been watching the promos. 9:30, Boris Johnson with Camilla Tominey. It's fantastic, so make sure that you do indeed watch that. I've got quite a lot more coming your way. There are some more front pages for you as well, because we're going to be talking about all of those. And an interesting one as well, about whether or not it is actually... I'm not saying this is tasteful, by the way. I'm saying whether or not it's actually, like, defined sexual harassment to call a woman a bird. I asked that because a woman did receive £50,000 as a payout, apparently, because she was called a bird. I'd probably be called a bird for that, but you can't really say that these days. Stay tuned.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We are now delighted to be joined by comedian and my beautiful friend, Francine Lewis, who's here to share with us her upcoming book, The Last Laugh, and an exciting competition in collaboration with none other than that mean Simon Cowell. Francine,
He's not so mean anymore.
Oh, is he not?
He's not. And do you know what?
Having a child, is it maybe?
Definitely. It's really weird because I really liked Simon. He was nasty. I just found that, I don't know, quite sexy. Now he's way too nice. Way too nice.
That's what they say, isn't it? You get all the nice guys say, I never get any luck with women, and they always say I'm too nice.
Do you know what? The truth is, I've always thought Simon was lovely. He's such a nice guy. Like, when I was doing Britain's Got Talent, I was very, very excited, you know, to meet Simon again, because it was the second time I'd actually met him. And I always thought he was such a charming, lovely man.
Of course, you are more recently well known for BGT and your impressions and whatnot.
Do you know what? I do watch a lot of reality TV, a lot of that sort of stuff.
What do you watch?
I love Towie, whenever Love Island's on. Seriously, honey, 100% definitely. You got to watch Essie. It's all about Towie. Love it, seriously. So I'm always doing, you know, whatever the new reality shows are.
The favourite is Katie Price, and we've got a video. I think we've got a selfie video of us doing...
Have we? we have from
I'm sure he is a guy.
Tatiana to Katie Bright, which she does amazingly. Come on, Tatiana, let's...
I don't.
Tatiana!
Katie, there's a mixture between Katie Price and Tatiana.
What do you think? I love when people take me off. It shows what a big star I am.
It's the lick of the lips.
The People's Channel.
OK, welcome back. I've got some more front pages for you, so let's crack on with those for now. I'm going to start off with the Times. They go with PM defies US to cede Chagos. This is another aspect, actually, that we didn't get into earlier on about whether or not this has actually damaged our relationship with the United States now, getting rid of those islands, signing them off to Mauritius. There's a theme on some of the other front pages. I'm going to stick with the Times for now. MPs weeks away from a free vote on assisted dying legislation. I do find it amazing how close we could be to being a country that would have assisted dying. But the Daily Mirror, making special memories with Kate. My life may be short, but will be filled with wonder, says the teen that Kate met and gave a hug to at an investiture event recently. Let's go to The Guardian. Yeah, again, MPs to be given historic votes on the legalisation of assisted dying. So that's that. And The Express, who, frankly, have been leading the charge on this, it's fair to say. I never thought I'd be alive to see the law change, but perhaps I will. This is Esther Ranson, hoping... She's been campaigning for assisted dying. She hopes it will now be legalised in her lifetime. The pledges that this will come before the Commons. Very conflicted. I must say I'm very conflicted as well on assisted dying. A lot of people are, aren't they?
Jo Cox's sister, Kim Ledbetter, has introduced the bill.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a free vote on the Labour side, at least, so it's a matter of conscience.
I think we'll do it.
I am written to at least twice a week about assisted dying. At least twice a week.
On the grounds of they want it?
Most people want it, but... Yeah. Some people have very strong reasons not to have it. They worry about will older people sort of surrender themselves in order to support their families, etc., etc.
I think it's... I respect anyone's decision. I can't imagine what it's like to live in just constant pain, right? I can't imagine that. I hope I never have to. So, there is that. But I am worried about it being a slippery slope. I don't know how you feel about it. Are you particularly bothered?
Yeah, I think especially considering the situation with the NHS, where I think a lot of old people might consider assisted suicide compared to the long waiting list with the NHS. I think when that's the option...
I wonder if it'd be pushed. I do hate to say it, but I can't help but wonder whether or not we'll start to see people getting to a certain age and being gently guided in the direction of something. Anyway, let's not go too morbid on this for now. I do want to talk about this. So, do you ever refer to women as birds? If you do, you might want to rethink what you say. Because a high-end whisky investment company located in Knightsbridge in London has been ordered to pay more than £50,000 in compensation to a female staff member after she sued the company for discrimination, sexual harassment, victimisation and breach of contract. She's got the full bingo card there. After handing in her resignation. Although the judge's ruling was likely influenced by one male colleague asking the victim if she was planning on getting pregnant and later locking her out of the office, the female staff member also complained about male colleagues calling women birds and celebrating their sexual conquests. Speaking more generally, should calling women birds amount to sexual harassment? I will start with you on this, Jess, if you don't mind. Do you think that that's sexual harassment, being called a bird?
No, I don't think so. I wouldn't call that sexual harassment. So I think it's quite outdated. I've not heard anyone under the age of 40 say certain birds, except from, like, Jay from In-Betweeners, perhaps. But no, I don't think it is. I think it's just colloquial speak. It's people just, speaking casually. And it's not a term of, trying to offend someone. It's just a casual term.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's outdated and probably... just not nice, really, is it? But I don't know if it's sexual harassment, Sean.
I think in this particular case, there seems to be an awful lot else that went on, and the use of the word bird was probably emblematic of all the other pressure that this woman was under. So it's probably not so much the word bird. It's like any word. It's the context which it's used, and that context seemed to be very out of order.
Matthew, have you got any anecdotes about birds?
I cannot believe that you've... So when I was in student politics at Manchester University, my my friend who was the women's officer turned to me one morning and said, and the student union was dominated by by the Greens, who were very, what we would now call woke, and she said, do you think I'm going to get into trouble for renaming Women's Week Birds Fortnight? Oh, and I've got a photographer from The Sun and a Page 3 girl coming. She did get into trouble, is the short answer. She's now a judge.
Right, good stuff. OK, I'll be honest with you, that anecdote was better than I'm glad you chirped up. So, okay.
Super smashing great, like Freddie Flintoff back on Bullseye.
No, there we are, yes, never miss a beat. OK, all right, well, look, it is finally now time to show you what happened when this toy aeroplane, this is the clip we've been teasing, Sean's happy, it's happening, this toy aeroplane began a rapid descent.
Oh! Oh!
It's right in the bonds. Can we play it again? Do it again. I could watch that all day. He's fine, by the way. The guy's fine. Yeah, I just want to say, yeah, he's like, play it again.
It's a cruel side to you, Patrick.
Do it again. Do it again. There we go. Right, there comes the plane. Here he goes, an adult playing with a plane. Bosh, that's what you get, mate. Grow up. Right, OK. So, let's go to the greatest Britain union.
I'm going to nominate him.
Yeah. Jess, who's your greatest Britain for us tonight, please?
My greatest Britain isn't actually British.
Right, honorary.
Honorary J.D. Vance, because during the debates, the vice presidential election debates, I think he actually crushed it. He absolutely slayed, as the Zoomers say. He was taking control of it. He was fact-checking the fact-checkers, taking control of the debates, and I think that's why he should be greatest Britain.
All right, and crucially, he didn't say he was friends with school shooters, which the other guy did, so, you know, on balance. Sean?
My greatest Britain is Heinz beans, and then you can hear me out. First and foremost, right? We as a nation get through 2 million cans a day.
I don't believe that.
I'm a fella. I like a full English, so I can imagine eating a lot of beans. But
I think beans are an abomination on a full English.
2 million cans a day.
So, right, well, look,
that's 1 in every 30 people having a can.
1 every 30 people in Britain have a can of beans every day.
Easily.
I'm just going to do a straw poll. There's a few of us in here. Did anyone in the office just shout up? Did you have a can of beans today in the gallery? Anyone? Yeah, seriously. Both of you.
Oh my! You wouldn't want to be trapped in. You want to be trapped in that small room.
And
in the enclosed space.
They've got a new can. That means you can get every drop, every bean out of there, which is important.
It's on the front of the Telegraph.
All right, go on then.
Mine is Daniel Day-Lewis, one of our finest acting talents from these islands, who is coming out of retirement to star in his son's film.
Is he really? That is good. I'm going to go for beans as the greatest Britain.
Of course you are.
I am. Heinz, although they're not really British, are they, Heinz?
Yes, they are.
Are they?
The beans are.
The beans are, but the
whatever, look,
company
we're
isn't.
bogged down in the detail there. OK, so who's your union jackass, please?
Yeah, so my nomination is Dawn Butler for her ridiculous, narcissistic, anti-white racist video, which I think was absolutely ridiculous and absolutely divisive.
Yeah, I am inclined to share some of those views. Go on, Sean.
Mine's is the civil servants at the ONS body who are going on strike after being asked to come into the office just 2 days a week. I think they really should have a look at the message they're sending the rest of the country that, of course, has to cover the bill for the civil service and all of our goings on in this country.
James Cleverly for tweeting, condemning the issue of the Chagos Islands when he was the one who was trying to do it in the first place.
We are going to go for Dawn Butler, who, again, I am at pains to say, has since retracted the original video, just for the avoidance of doubt. Oh, grief. Other brands of beans are available. Right,
Yeah.
OK. Yeah, you can
I'm
eat
sure
as many
they
of
are.
those. It's not just high. Are there, though? I've never heard of them. Anyway, whatever. Other brands of beans...
But they don't have the upside-down can.
I'm going. I'll see you tomorrow at 9. Well done, everyone. Thanks.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening and welcome to your GB News weather update brought to you by the Met Office. Well, as we head into the weekend, things are going to turn increasingly unsettled with some outbreaks of rain, but there's not going to be a total washout and there will still be some brighter interludes at times. To end the week, though, we do still have high pressure dominating, bringing plenty of fine and dry settled conditions before low pressure generally takes hold as we head into the weekend. Overnight, though, plenty of clear spells, which means it is going to be feeling cold, colder than last night, and we're likely to see some mist and fog. This might just be a little bit stubborn to clear at times, particularly across parts of your Yorkshire. A different story in the west, though, as we start to see more and more cloud to spill into northwestern parts, even with some light rain by the time we reach Friday morning. So a bit of an unsettled start, fairly damp just in western parts of Scotland, a few drips and drabs of rain across northern parts too. Generally drier further east, but likely rather cloudy. Similar across Northern Ireland with some outbreaks of rain just starting to push into the west. Elsewhere, though, as I say, there will be some mist and fog in places, a little bit slow to clear through tomorrow morning, but largely bright once this clears away. And here we do generally have high pressure sticking around, so still plenty of sunny spells once that fog clears in the morning. And with light winds, it should feel fairly pleasant here. A different story in the northwest, though. Cloud continuing to spill in here with some outbreaks of rain and turning rather blustery under those cloudier skies too. But where you do catch the sunshine, with highs of 16, 17 across the south and southeast, it should still be feeling rather pleasant. As we head into the weekend, fairly similar to start, likely a chilly start across central and southern UK, perhaps some fog in the morning, but generally dry and settled. Outbreaks of rain still in the northwest, and we have this area of heavy rain just moving into the southwest later into the day. So likely to see some quite heavy downpours later in Saturday, and generally unsettled over the weekend and into next week.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Luck. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
My kingdom for a voice. Scientists have, I can't believe this story, scientists have incredibly recreated the voice of Richard III using both his skull shape and a knowledge of medieval speech patterns. Me neither. The result is that the king, who was famously killed at the Battle of Bosworth in 1485, would have spoken in English close to that of a man from modern-day Yorkshire or Somerset. Let's take a listen.
The sun shines with no less licht and splendour, nor does it suffer any diminution of its strength.
Let's discuss this further with Yvonne Morley-Chisholm, the voice coach behind the project, who spent 10 years researching how the monarch would have sounded. Yvonne, you can probably see from my face, I have no idea how this works. Can you enlighten me as to what all this is about?
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Dawn. So yes, I had a mad idea 10 years ago. I normally work with actors where we have a recording of a historical person, and we do something called vocal profiling to train the actor who's going to be performing on stage or screen to move their tongue tip, their jaw, their lips, everything, and get behind the personality of who they're playing. We obviously have quite a lot of that missing from Richard. We don't have a recording of him, but I wondered how far we could go. And a key player in this has been and is Professor Caroline Wilkinson, who over a decade ago created his face, first of all, from his skull. Now, on the day we, as Shakespeare would say, shuffle off our mortal coil, every little dent and dimple in the bones says how fit and strong the muscles were. So I thought, OK, we know what his face could do.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. The top stories from the GB newsroom. Well, The Sun is reporting that Labour is facing a fresh row after offering companies breakfast with the business secretary in return for £30,000. The party reportedly invited bosses to a restaurant for the rare chance to gain insight from Jonathan Reynolds in return for sponsorship of the meal. Now, that's after Downing Street said earlier today that the Prime Minister has paid back more than £6,000 worth of gifts and hospitality received since becoming Prime Minister following a backlash over donations. It comes as the Labour peer at the centre of the row over these donations to Sir Keir Starmer has been placed under investigation by the House of Lords standards watchdog. Lord Ali faces a probe over what is being called the alleged non-registration of interests. He's one of the party's biggest donors and the largest donor to the Prime Minister. Now, the UK has announced it's giving up sovereignty of the Chagos Islands after more than half a century. The deal, reached after years of negotiations, will see Britain hand over the Chagos Islands to China ally Mauritius. It includes the tropical atoll of Diego Garcia, which is home to a military base used by the UK and the US. Under the agreement, the base will remain under UK and US jurisdiction for at least the next 99 years. But Conservative leadership candidates reacted angrily, with former Foreign Secretary James Cleverly labelling the government as weak. Tom Tugendhat says the move undermines UK security.
What it does is it means that although the airbase, which is jointly UK-US operated, is maintained on a 99-year lease, the other outlying islands go back to Mauritian sovereignty. Now, there are many other countries which will be interested in a permanent base in the Indian Ocean, China being one of them.
Fresh explosions have been heard in Hezbollah's stronghold in southern Beirut as Israel says it's struck the group's intelligence headquarters. The Israeli